Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Dr. Brianna Diorio. Brianna is an integrative health practitioner, researcher, and educator with a PhD in integrative medicine and a master's in clinical nutrition. Brianna has spent years studying how physiology, psychology, and behavior intersect. Specifically, how our nervous system and emotions drive the patterns we keep repeating in our life and relationships. But what makes Brianna's work powerful isn't just the science, it's the humanity behind it. She's taken everything she's learned and lived to help people build emotional awareness, regulate stress, and create relationships that actually feel safe and grounded. In this conversation, we get into all that, the real psychology of attraction and avoidance. If you've ever wondered why you keep showing up in the same ways or how to finally break free from those loops, this episode's going to give you a framework and a mirror. Brianna, welcome to the Blueprint Podcast.
Big leagues, and that's how that's going to be for you. I literally mark this date. You're going to say, Brianna, you were so right about that. And so you have to just keep doing the reps, basically, of being like, I don't know when I'm going to get called up from the bullpen to the big leagues, but I trust that I am prepared and I've done the work that I need to. And so that when it happens, you don't get nervous and you're just like, cool, great. Now I'm going full pro mode and I'm going to open up my stride. And that's what's going to happen for you. And I'm manifesting it and you're welcome. And I'll only take 2% of all of your sales.
I really love that. I consider this the season of refinement. So when I look back at all the things that I've been through over the past 3 years, so all of this started because of my work in crime scene and seeing the letters that people leave behind when they make the ultimate decision to leave the planet permanently. And these things change you, and it causes you to put yourself in this place of your own self-reflection because you see pieces of yourself in those letters and you're like, I've thought about that. I've had that experience. And then you're trying to figure out, how can we prevent this? Is there a way to mitigate this? And you start reading all the books behind me. And of course, that led into creating the content and building out the podcast and doing all the things that I've been doing. Because the overarching theme is I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable, I can't do this. We really beat ourselves up and put ourselves in a little box that becomes our mental prison. And we have all these limiting core beliefs that say, these are the reasons why you can't do this thing. And here's all the evidence for that for your entire lifetime. Of course, you have a bunch of people in your life that are more than happy to provide you with all that evidence and remind you of who you are and where you've been and what you're actually capable of. But then you also know inside of you, there's this little light, there's this little fire. It's right about here in your abdomen. And it's always just about a little bit of a flicker. When you start believing in yourself and saying, you know what, actually, no, I'm going to start rejecting all these things that people say, the way that they say it, the tone that they have, the demeanor that they take with you. I'm going to start rejecting that a little bit because I've taken the time to read all of these books behind me. And I started listening to podcasts like Chris Williamson, and you start to feel more empowered within your own body. You feel more capable, competent, and confident with who you are because your language has changed. You don't have the same language that you had previously. So you don't fit into that box anymore because you see things differently. You're using a very different perspective to not only look at yourself, but the world and everything around you. You just start to see it differently. So you start taking different action, and that action over a long period of time builds into exactly what we're talking about. It starts to snowball and becomes that one moment where things just click. And before you know it, you're moving fully into the direction that you actually want to go instead of this fear state, which I'm in right now, where there's a lot of unknowns. I'm not who I was, but I'm not who I'm becoming. And I have an idea of who this person is that I'm becoming, and I just haven't been fully refined to be able to hold that within my nervous system. And so I think for me, that's the block at this point, is this has been a season of refinement over the past 3 years, and man, has it been brutal. But you capture this level of self-awareness where you're like, you know what, I know this can happen, but maybe I have to do some of these other things that I don't really want to do in order to get to this place.
It's also the idea of region beta paradox, which is one of my favorite phenomenons, this idea of when we get into a place of comfortable complacency, you would be better off if things were worse for you. And when things are just passable enough, it doesn't galvanize you to say, I need to get my shit together and actually either make a change, or I'm not hungry enough, or things, it would be better for me if this person was more of a dick, or my boss was shittier, or I was making zero money, or whatever it is. And so people have to get into this state of saying it's so much easier to just backslide into what was, because it's that familiar hell. And as your brain loves familiarity, your brain is extremely lazy and it loves to predict certain patterns. And so when it doesn't know the unknown, or what is that, where could I go next? How high could I go? It's also an interesting paradox, because we put so many limits on ourselves before we even think about how could it be. And it's one of my favorite quotes, this idea of I think and I've thought myself into worst case scenarios, but not once have I thought myself into best case scenarios. And I say this with my clients all the time. I'm like, both are equally not true. So why wouldn't you at minimum at least reach for a better feeling thought that puts you then, because your thoughts influence your feelings and your feelings influence your actions. We get into a place of an action state where now that I feel better, I'm going to do the things that I need to do to get me to that next level, even when I can't see the full next step yet.
I love that we're having this conversation. This wasn't planned, by the way. This is not in my notes. When we haven't talked for a while, these are the types of things that tend to pop up. I also think it's a moment of just clarity for others that are going through this right now. So I'll just be totally open and honest. I'm struggling right now. I'm not where I want to be financially. The financials that are coming in is very small. So it's put me into this place where I've been thinking of taking what feels like a massive backstep by going back to what I've done previously. So what have I done in my career path? I've been a chef. I've been a police officer. I've been a non-traditional student. They love to put that label on you when you're older and getting your bachelor's degree, but I've gotten good at school, right? So I know I can go and get my bachelor's degree. I've already done it. I know I can go and get a master's degree. I've already done it. Why not go get another master's degree on top of that? Because that's an easy thing that I could go do that I'm familiar with. It's stepping into those old roles, because I could very easily insert myself into those places once again. And then that gives you that felt sense of safety and security. You've got the money coming in, you've got the insurance, health insurance, and now everything's going to be paid, and you can anticipate what's going to happen next. The problem with each of those is I would have to give up everything that I'm doing right now and everything that I've built. And so you find yourself in this place of, now what? What do you do?
Yeah.
So what guidance would you give to me right now in that position?
I think a couple of things. Number one, you have to always be assessing the cost of my current decision. What is this going to cost me in the future? As well as the cost of inaction, as opposed to the wrong decision, right? People get so focused on this idea of, oh, I think that I'm going to make the wrong decision if I go back, or if I take a job, or whatever the version. Again, the stories that we create in our head and the meaning that we assign to the stories. And it's the idea of inaction or no decision is worse for you than the quote wrong decision. Because if you do truly, let's say, trust yourself enough to have the skill set to say, no matter what I choose, that I will be able to pivot from here. So that ability of being able to pivot, I think, is important. Also, no matter what decision you make in life, there's going to be some version of grief. So if you choose option B, let's say, of I'll go back and I'll get this job, and I will always grieve what it could have been if I went full in on option A. Now, if you go with option A, there's going to be a version of you that grieves, what would it have been like if I would have just taken the safe, comfortable route of going back? And so you have to pick your problems, or pick the grief price, the price range that you feel comfortable with, of saying, yes, it's costing me this now, but the dividends or the return on this in, let's say, a year from now or 2 years from now is going to be much higher. And so I think being able to expand your horizon and seeing what your threshold and your tolerance is for that. It's like when people give the example of, oh, I can't buy a house right now because the market's really bad. Every person who's been in a buying phase has been through what they have considered a really bad market time. At one point, when the mortgages were 11%, that was really bad. Now, when they were at 7%, that was really bad relative to us. And if you can carry the debt for long enough, knowing that at any given point, things do end up evening out. And so you have to be doing a cost benefit analysis internally and understanding that every decision comes at a price with a price tag. Am I willing to pay that? And what is actually the long-term dividends or the year over year, as opposed to the intraday stock prices? And I think people get too myopic in the sense of saying, this is what feels best right now, or I have to make this decision now. And sometimes that does happen. Your back is against the wall. You got bills to pay. That's a very real thing. But also, it's understanding like, okay, where else then can I make a sacrifice here or put the price tag on this, knowing that in a year from now or 6 months from now, that I will get that return that I want. But every decision you have in life comes with a sense of grief. And so it's which one hurts less or which one can I have the most equanimous mindset with?
It's so interesting because when we look at what we do in terms of coaching, podcasting, content creation, and there's so much more that you do as well. And you look back on all of the comments, the DMs, the messages, the transformations that are occurring, it makes you feel like you are absolutely moving in the right direction because there's so many of those stories that it's crazy to stop. In my mind, that's not really an option to actually to sit back and just say, I'm just not going to do this anymore. This was fun. This was great. Had a great opportunity. Because the more I talk to other people that are doing this, they're all struggling in the same way, although they're not going to outwardly admit it. Because they think in some reason it negatively impacts their business to say, yeah, this has been a struggle. This has been hard. This has been difficult. And for me, I think it's a level of transparency that should be put out there because it shows other people that, yeah, if you're going to do this, it's difficult. It's not easy. It's going to try you in so many different ways, but you're going to learn so much about yourself and other people in that process. Like I said, it's that season of refinement. And as you go through this, you're collecting all the different skills that you never had previously, or you're honing the skills that you had and the business acumen that you've needed this entire time. So you're learning literally as you go. And I really take all of those testimonials to heart in that that is the sign to keep going, keep producing, to keep moving forward.
Part of that is the burn the boats theory. When you're burning the boat, what people do subconsciously is they still keep like one shitty dinghy somewhere in their life. So it's that idea of I could always just go back or I could just get, and again, it is a fine line of saying, all right, I have to have some kind of, there's fixed costs of life and I have to be able to support that. But you don't even always know how capable you are unless you do fully burn the boats and say there is no other option here. And what level of me will now rise to the occasion, or how scrappy am I willing to get, or how hungry am I really to move forward? But I think it is also important that people understand that there's this illusion of everybody has it figured out. Like it's idiots all the way to the top, and everybody is building a plane while they're flying it. And people are just better at putting the masks on. And I think we were talking about this before we started recording. People like you and I who are very authentic, and you're just like, yeah, this is a shit show right now. I think that's what people want to hear, believe it or not, because that is how most of life is. And I think it's just, that is what's nice about the creator community. Like, I think you and I have a special bond where we are like real with each other, being like, this isn't working. Where it's almost like a trauma bond of sorts to say, then as opposed to some of those other people, I wouldn't even want to be getting advice from them because they're not doing and conducting business the way that I would want to be doing life. So I think you have to always have that perspective versus perception lens has to always be there.
And then that just runs right into my own limiting beliefs about running a business, operating a business, what that looks like. Because I've had people reach out, be a part of my network. Let's get you into the network for podcasting. And we're going to get you all of these ads and we're going to get you host read ads in that process. Then you go and you look at their content and the content isn't horrible, but they are paying for engagement. And you can always tell because they have 15,000 likes, 2 comments, and like one share or repost. And that doesn't make sense. And then they say they're going to get you organic reach on the podcast, but it's not organic reach. And it's really frustrating to hear that. And if that's really the way the system works with getting ads, that you're basically lying to the people that you're advertising for on the number of downloads that you're getting because you're getting them from overseas, make that make sense for me. And we're calling that organic. It's not. And so you find yourself in this place of, I don't want to do business with somebody like that. And I certainly don't want to do business that way myself at all. I would rather have the organic reach, which I have with all of my content, and take the followers, take the losses, whatever that looks like. But at least I know that whoever listens to the podcast, those are real people that are listening. They're getting the message. And that's the whole point of this exercise and doing this. It's not about, getting some advertising dollars, although that really helps with keeping things going.
But it's also a mind fuck because we do now live in this world where, and I know there've been a lot of posts that have been done about this, but let's say TikTok, even 6 months ago, my lowest viewing videos was like 10,000 views, right? And now if I hit 2,000, I'm like, wow, Brianna, you suck. You're not this anymore. And I'm just like, it's that idea of if you had 2,000 people come to a show to buy a ticket, that would be amazing. And it's just weird how we then do put this perceived value. And again, like, I'm probably the only person who's looking at my page. You're not coming on my page and looking at what is Brianna's numbers on this. And we're
Actually, I am.
and actually, you're like, no, actually, I have ads and all of my enemies. So, but it's crazy because then you like, and then that also then starts to skew your perception. And I've had conversations with myself to be like, okay, Brianna, who are we making content for? Like myself, which is what originally I think made my algorithm do so well and made my audience grow so organically, is because like I was just like talking to myself. And then like I tried to do a little bit more salesy shit and like those videos bombed. And I was just like, I'm just gonna get back to doing what I like. And it is this weird, again, this loosely hanging on of trying to control something. And then you got to just do the greatest hits. People like the greatest hits, and you don't have to be reinventing the wheel. And I think it takes a little pressure off of yourself to be like, okay, maybe they just need a repetition. They don't need to always learn more. They need to be reminded. And I need to just take the pressure off of myself to stop trying to be waxing poetic all the time and just telling people like piece of shit people do piece of shit things. And those are some of my best videos. It's crazy.
It is, but it's speaking to people where they're at. And often they just want to hear what they want to hear. They're not really, and I'm not going to say everybody because it's not everybody, but there's a large amount of people on social media that just want their feelings validated. So when you make a statement like that, it's yeah, and everybody's a piece of shit. They're not, and it's a little more complicated than that. But people don't want to hear that it's a little more complicated than that, because now the onus gets put back on you to be able to start figuring out your interpersonal relationships, what that looks like. Can you improve your relationships? The answer is yes, you can. But it takes changing your perspective, and that means you have to change the way you look at yourself, which is really hard to do, to look in that mirror. The other part about TikTok, and I think this is hilarious, and I'm glad you mentioned it, I also get, hey, you just got 600 views on a video. Congratulations. And that comes directly from TikTok in my activities. Just like, I used to get millions of views regularly, millions. Like 2019 alone, right around 19 million views. Not 2019, 2024, 19 million views, which was great. That's wonderful. I'm using creator search insights. I'm creating content that people apparently want to see because that's what they're searching for. And that's what I've used for all the Take a Walk with Me videos, was diving into, and this is my little trick, guys. You dive into creator search insights, you find the one that is trending, then you watch like 10 other videos and go into the comment section and use the comment section to build your video out, to build the script out.
Once, I think you messaged me about that, and I was like, I don't even know how to look at my analytic. I have never looked at analytics once on TikTok.
So I don't look at the analytics, but I do look at what people are searching for. And I love seeing their comments because it tells you exactly where the argument is. So if you kill their argument in your content, then they don't really have anything to say, but they'll watch it on repeat because it's like, this guy gets it. He hears me.
You know what I've been clapping back with actually a lot? I love a clap back. Obviously, I'm from Jersey.
Yeah.
People who will be like, oh, I can't afford you. And I say, you actually can't afford to keep circling the same patterns. Number one, what is that costing you? And then number two, I always tell people, I'm like, you don't need more information. I'm like, how many of my videos you have saved? I'm like, you need implementation of the information. And so I always say to people as well, I'm not out here fixing your bike tires or like selling bubble gum. Like, I am helping you unlearn patterns that have gotten you into the precarious situations that you are in, where you have been now having a negative ripple effect on everything else. Meanwhile, people are like out here putting stupid Gucci bags and like Louis Vuitton shoes on a credit card. And I'm like, and you won't pay $2,000 for a monthly container. That is, and I'm like, and that's why you are living the life that you are. And I don't feel sorry for people like that. And obviously that's I have a very tough love, like brat tax brie approach. Like we're not here to bullshit. But it's crazy because I'm just like, okay, then you're not tired of your own bullshit, and you will keep living this life and keep living in misery because you think that you can't afford it. I'm like, no, you can't afford to keep living your life like this, but go ahead, save 90 more videos and then play the victim role and blame everybody else.
You're not wrong. It's so interesting because there's different levels of personal development work. I think a lot of people that are on social media, they find the easy stuff and they stick with it. It's this is good enough. This makes me feel good. I want to feel something. So I look for the things that make me feel good, that validate my experience, that validate my truth. And then they stick with that and say, I'm good. We hear this a lot with the attachment conversation on social media. Everybody's an attachment expert and they're expert on avoidance because they dated 5 of them, but there's billions of people on the planet. So we're going to paint everybody with an extremely broad brush and say, this is everybody that is avoidant, not realizing it's on a spectrum. So where on the spectrum is the avoidant person that you're dating? And if you have repeat offenders in your life where you keep dating avoidance every single time, then you have to look inward because it's more about how you relate to other people than the people that you're actually dating. Like you're actively choosing that at that point, especially if you have the language to use. So if you have attachment language and you're using that to describe your experiences, then you have the self-awareness to recognize that this also falls on you. It's part of your pattern, and that's something that you have to look at.
Yeah, anybody who follows me knows that I actually don't subscribe to attachment styles at all. I just think you have a propensity to be a certain way and people bring things out in you. But it's also when people ask questions like, this person was a narcissist, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't give a shit about what
I
you're
don't.
feeling. I'm like, what is the behavior showing you? I always say, don't focus on the label, focus on the behavior. Do I like the behavior? Does it make me feel better or worse? And do I want to be associated with that? And I'm like, because there are people who are, quote, kind, benevolent people who have narcissistic tendencies or have avoidant tendencies, or no offense, maybe you just weren't a priority for them. So they are treating you capricious in a capricious way. So it's not always about the person. It's what is the behavior? And to your point, if I keep having this pattern in my life where there is a pattern, there is a problem. And I am probably the problem here. But people don't want to do that because that would require to you have to open up the hood, get under there and be like, oh, we've been going on for quite some time and this is actually a me problem. And that you can't do that in a $9.99 ebook course or a 21-day challenge, unfortunately. And people just want to, it's like people have been in therapy for 30 years. And I'm like, great. So your parents messed you up. And now what are you doing about it? Just blaming everybody else? I am zero tolerance.
So that is an interesting statement when we start talking about therapy and the amount of time that people spend in therapy. The best therapists that I know, they will always say there is an expiration date on the therapy that you're receiving. Now, this is going to be subject to the individual that they're working with. It can be longer periods of time. It can be something that's intermittent over time. You can do refreshers throughout the year if you want to, but at some point you want to go from this place to this place and then leave and go live your life, do your thing, interact with other people, live out in the world, deploy what they taught you and what you learned from those experiences in real time, and then do some refreshers with them if that's something that you're interested in. But there's so much low-hanging fruit to begin with that people aren't doing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And if you really tapped in, put the phone down, right? Look at how much time you spend on the phone, but then tap into all of those things and start making that a practice and a habit and look at your rituals and beliefs. And you'll realize very quickly that, man, there's so much that I give my own power away to. And that's why I feel the way that I do. And then there's the group of people that despise their parents because the mental health industrial complex has shown them that, yes, you should resent your parents and separate yourself from them. And that seems to be very common speak, not only on social media, but the therapists on social media. I'm like, why are we doing that? Why would we want to separate from the people that are in our lives? You might have a very good reason and it might be totally valid. But overall, for most people, it comes down to you have to be able to put yourself in their shoes and see their life from their experience. And very quickly, you understand why they are the way they are. And it goes back to you can't fix or change people. You have to learn to love them as they are. And then you can prioritize the amount of time that you actually spend with them. But if you want to spend your life in resentment and contempt and despise your family, you are more than welcome to do that. And your reasons may be very valid. But for most people, there's a massive misunderstanding about who it is that they're dealing with, where they came from and why they did the things that they did and why they act the way that they do. And the fact that they're not going to be who you want them to be at 70 and 80 years old. It's just not going to happen. So then the question becomes, can you love them as they are?
Truism that I live by is number one, radical responsibility will do more for your life than any motivational post ever will. Everything is your fault, good, bad, or
That's a good
indifferent.
one. Yeah.
Because wherever you point the blame finger is where you're pointing all the power to. And so if you're the problem that my life sucks, guess what? That means that now you are the only person who holds the keys to me being able to then, quote, fix my life. I would never give somebody that kind of power. And I have this in clients all the time, even with choosing, oh, should I go back to an ex or what's going on with this pattern? And I'm like, at the end of the day, it has to be about what works for you, because you're the one who has to live with your decisions, number one. But also, if I'm always figuring out what is it that they're going to do, or are they going to change, or how's it going to be different this time, what is that saying about me? That means that I have no opinion or insight into my own life. So radical responsibility in every sense of the word has to be your top priority. Additionally, you have to start thinking about what happened to you is not your fault, but how you choose to move forward and fix it is your responsibility. I'm sorry that what you went through was traumatic. The most traumatic thing that happened to you is the most traumatic thing that happened to you, right? Like big T trauma and little t trauma. However, the more that you keep, again, like blaming other people or therapizing it or getting to the psychological root, great. And then I always say, and now what? And now what are you doing about it? That is like one of my favorite sentences I say in every single session with clients when they want to blame somebody else or say, I was in this kind of dynamic. And I say, great. And now what? Even if you had the worst parents or the worst relationships, what are you doing now? So that starting effective immediately, we can break that cycle on your own. And that is, you're taking away the power from anybody else. And the onus is totally on you. And then that holds yourself accountable to be like, you know what? I'm still in the same position. I got to really take a look at myself.
I am going to plug my friend's podcast here. Have you heard of the Gaslit Truth podcast?
No, I have not.
So 2 therapists, they've been on the show, I've been on theirs, and they talk a lot about what you just gave to us over the past couple minutes. And I think it's really important that people spend time with that, is just getting a different perspective from 2 therapists that have really been through it, and they've seen it, they've gone through things themselves, and they've begun to recognize that what they've been doing and the way things have been operating is not necessarily for the best for the individual. So I think it's really important to look at different perspectives and to check out the Gaslit Truth podcast. You're going to love it. The other part is, you remember the Care Bears?
Yeah, I was not really, can I understand the long and short of it? Yeah.
So I'm in late 70s, 80s kid. So that was one of the cartoons that we had available to us to watch. But they had a thing called the Care Bear stare. And every time I hear somebody giving their power away in the way that they do to all the things that are outside of them, I just picture that little Care Bear standing like this with that, whatever it is, grumpy or the big heart or whatever, and the energy just going straight to that person or that thing that's upsetting you, that's frustrating you. You're angry, you're irritated, sad, lonely, depressed, whatever story you have going on in your head, you're just like, wow, and that energy is going straight to them. And it's like, why do you want to give your energy away to those things? You're depleting yourself in all of these areas. And so what happens, ask yourself, what happens if I were to retain that energy for myself, to transmute that, to shift it into something different, to use that in a way that's going to benefit me? Again, in the pillars that I say all the time, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, how different would your life actually be?
Yeah. People need to start setting their own thermostat. If you are so either offended or upset or besmirched by every little thing that happened in your life and you can't set your own thermostat, good luck getting through life without a montón de headaches, because you will be fighting an uphill battle and you will be at the mercy of everybody else, which you have zero control over. Like, to me, logically, that makes no sense. You do not need to have a PhD. You don't even need to go to college for that. Understanding that anytime that I give somebody a reaction or my mood or whatever that is dependent upon somebody else, my worth is, it's called self-worth. Others' worth. What are we doing here, people? You have to figure out, how do I set my own thermostat and regulate that myself? And that is a power, a skill, I should say, that people can learn to cultivate, but they don't know either how to or they don't want to, because you have to, again, start taking radical responsibility of being like, yeah, I'm giving away too many fucks here and I can't afford to keep doing that. And you have to start, again, always doing a cost benefit analysis of all of the energy and interactions that I have. And you have to really start valuing what you bring to the table as well, and just say less. And people cannot do that.
So to all the people that think we're complaining right now, what would you tell them?
I don't think we're complaining. I think I'm giving people a light kick in the ass to say, stop blaming everybody. Blame yourself. Blame yourself for 30 days in a row for everything, good, bad, or indifferent. When you accomplish something, people are the first to be like, I want to thank me. I did that. Good on me. But when something goes wrong in your life, people are so quick to bemoan and blame everybody else. You are a willing participant. Do things outside of our control happen? Yes, but it is our reaction and our opinion to whatever happens that determine how we then pivot or rise from the ashes or transmute whatever it is that's going to happen, which is why, again, feelings are so subjective. The idea of whatever you might feel upset about something and I might not feel upset about something, because perspective and perception are two different things. So if people listen to nothing from this episode, I would say work on differentiating out your perception, which is the way that I filter reality, versus the perspective of something, which is how you can expand reality, changing the lens when you can't change the landscape. Because that is why people can go through the same exact thing and turn out totally differently, or take the most tragic event of their life, and then that becomes their origin. It's like thinking about, how can I make this my origin story instead of the thing that takes me out and moves me back 6 perspective will do more for your life than 70 TikTok videos.
Oh, that's true. And you're building a different relationship and meaning to your experiences. And this is where taking that mental inventory of your past experiences is so important. You don't have to relive everything that you've gone through, but you do have to have a basic understanding of what happened, what occurred, why was it important, why did it challenge you, what was that exactly? And you might not have the language for it because a lot of that is in the past. So you have the language that you had in the past, in those moments at the age at which you were. That's what you have. That was the knowledge and the wisdom that you had at the time. Now, as an adult, and you read all the books, you listen to the podcasts, you take on a different language and you have a different understanding of the world and your place in it. So now you can go back to those experiences ever so briefly and assign new meaning to it with the language that you have today. And that's such an important exercise because it literally gives you your power back from the experiences that were probably the most challenging to you and have created a lot of the patterns that you've experienced throughout time. And so then today you can say, you know what? Today's the day. Today's the day that I'm going to end all the other things that I've been doing that have created these patterns in my life, and I'm going to start making a different choice. And that's why I talk so much about the power of the pause, because it's literally, I'm feeling emotionally activated, a little dysregulated. Where is that coming from? You're scanning your environment. You're taking in all this information. You're going to break it down. You're going to pause. You're going to take a breath, right? Double inhale in through the nose, long exhale out. And you're going to give yourself the time and opportunity to actually assess that situation and then say, okay, this is what I normally do with that first thought. That's your conditioned first thought. I want to choose the second thought, whatever that is, right? Because it's going to be better than the first one. The first one's conditioned. It's usually a little catty, right? You're angry, F that guy, whatever you're feeling. And then in the second thought, you can say, but I'd rather come from this other direction that makes me feel good about myself and the experience that I'm having.
Yeah.
It's not sugarcoating anything. It's just being real about what you're actually experiencing and recognizing that even if it's in relationship to somebody else, you can look at the other person and say, they must be having a hard day.
Yeah. Also, just not having to take on everybody else's emotional weight all the time of being like, I can sympathize for what you're going through and I can be compassionate towards it. That is not, as I like to say, that's not my shit to flush, because it's not. And you have to, you do have to start figuring out, okay, if these are the patterns that I keep, or the routes that I keep running, and it keeps having the same result for me and I'm not happy, then I have to look at me first. No, nothing else is going to fix that. So you have to always go back to the root of the problem. But again, that takes longer than a 7-day whatever reboot course. And you have to think about, how far am I from home? I always say, if you're 50 miles from home, it's going to take a lot longer to get home if you're 5 miles from home. It's like that train quote. So how long have you been circling this pattern? How long have you been using the same excuses? How long have you had this subconscious shitty belief? A belief is a thought that you just keep thinking. It is your truth, not a universal truth. So if your beliefs, again, they influence your feelings and your actions, and the beliefs are they limiting me or are they expanding me? Are they making me feel better or do they feel worse? All that kind of work is free. You don't have to be working with a therapist or a coach or whatever it is. But when is the last time somebody actually did a thought audit? Every client that I have goes through and they do a thought audit, because you have so many of the repetitive thoughts and so many of them are not serving you and they're so outdated that if that is what ultimately determines how you feel, and then again, your feelings is what ultimately determines the actions that we take, you need to get to the root. And Tony Robbins talks about this all the time. You don't like experience life, you experience the life that you focus on. So what life are you focusing on? What beliefs are you focusing on? Whatever you believe is true, and your brain will always find evidence to support it. So if you think you're unworthy and no one's going to love you and every guys are trash and women are the worst, you will find any sort of evidence to believe that, again, because your brain loves patterns. Your brain doesn't want to try to make new thoughts and annihilate new neural pathways. So you have to work on deprogramming and then reprogramming thoughts. And that's just a repetition game. And you can actually do that quicker if you just get up to bat more often.
It's so funny. So I love that you're answering all the questions that I have here without me even having to ask the question. This is so great. But I was having a conversation with a therapist yesterday, and I came to self-punishment is also self-soothing. And she came back and said, yeah, for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started laughing because you do go back to where did that come from? Where did I learn that punishing myself was actually a way of regulating myself, but it put me to a baseline that is a dysfunctional baseline, right? You don't have to live there, but it was such an easy place to get to. It was the coping mechanism of choice at the time that became the way of being, and it can feel good. So then you get to this place where you have to start asking yourself, and this is the self-awareness piece, is if I were to let go of the pain that I've experienced, who would I be? And I don't think we ask ourselves that question often enough, or even really think about what it is that, again, is causing us to feel the way that we do, or the coping mechanisms that we tend to lean towards. And so that's the patience and obedience part of all of this, is being able to recognize that, okay, so that's dysfunctional, that's unhelpful, I don't like that, I don't want to feel that way, I don't have to feel that way. Why am I doing that to myself? And I can start choosing this other thing in those moments that leads me down a very different path. The problem is you become even more dysregulated when you're choosing this new thing because it's unfamiliar and you haven't wired yourself internally for that yet. And so it just takes time. But this is the kind portion of all this where you start being kind to yourself instead. So you use reframes in that moment when you shift into, I'm going to punish myself, right? Instead, I'm going to say, you know what? I went through something challenging and that's okay. And I'm moving forward. It's beautiful outside. You scan your environment, you look for something peaceful, you pet your dog, you go for a walk. There's a million and one things you can do that's going to pull you into the present moment instead of going back to that maladaptive coping mechanism.
I always say heaven on earth is a choice, not a place, right? So much of that is the reframes, the mindset work, the neuroscience tools. But additionally, what you were just talking about, it's if you've ever taken a golf lesson or a tennis lesson or any sports, right? If you have consistently, let's say, had the same swing pattern for a really long time and you're just going to the range and you keep just practicing the same swing pattern and never make improvements, you will keep always slicing the ball right. At some point, you actually have to deconstruct what is going on. And when you're doing that, in that deconstruction phase, is your swing gets worse for a little bit. It feels really uncomfortable. You're changing your grip up. You're like, and now I'm placing the ball right and left, and I'm not hitting it. And so you actually have to get worse first and take a few steps backward to then, when you get back up to the driving range, metaphorically, you're like, oh, and now I fixed it. But if you keep just doing the same thing repetitively, even if that's what feels comfortable, then you're going to keep getting the same results. Everything in life is a lagging result of the decisions you made a week ago, the reps, mental reps that you put in 2 weeks ago, the conversations you had with yourself 10 years ago. So if you don't like what's on the scoreboard, you have to go back and either run new routes or create an entirely different playbook. And people either need to get accountability for that, again, because the brain likes what is familiar, the nervous system likes what is familiar, or the most basic first step is admitting, I'm tired of my own bullshit. I have been saying this for over a decade. Like, you can go back to podcasts I was on a decade ago saying change happens when you are tired of your own bullshit. And until that happens, until somebody says, I'm sick of this story, it doesn't matter how many podcast episodes you listen to, how many containers you join, how many therapists and coaches. You have to be like, my swing sucks, metaphorically. I need to figure it out.
Yeah, I always say you have to hit your pain threshold plus one more step. So when your threshold is because you live there, like, this is normal, this is good, this is where I live, I'm conditioned for this, I can handle this. until you get that one step beyond, and then it feels like everything's falling apart. And that's
Yeah.
usually where change starts to happen. You're like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. We're going to do this
Mhm.
differently. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Every day
So,
has to as in the energetic space, the quantum leap, like collapsing timeline. But it does have to happen. Like you do have to clear out the old stuff, your old life. I always say your old life is the down payment for your new life. You can't have two couches in your living room. If you want a new couch, you got to eventually get rid of the old one. And sometimes when you're getting rid of the old one, you ordered it and they said it's going to be 4 to 12 weeks. And you're just like, so what am I supposed to do for 12 weeks? Sit on the floor? And that's where people get stuck of saying, instead of just maybe saying, oh, my living room doesn't have a couch right now. Let me go organize my kitchen. They focus so much on what is missing from their life or what is lacking. And that's what makes people go back to what was not good for them or what's comfortable for them because they cannot tolerate that short-term pain of my couch is coming. I just don't know when. And people, again, it's building up a tolerance for boredom. It's building up a tolerance for discomfort and building up, and there has to be on some level a little bit of faith. You can have faith or you can worry. You can't do both. You have to be like, am I doing everything that's in my control? Am I voting with my actions? Am I actually taking radical responsibility of my life? And if I'm doing all of those things, then sometimes you have to just let that shit bake. You know, I can't keep opening the oven.
and then the exercise here for that is start clearing out your space. This is something that I've done recently, and it changes you in such a good way because I went through my basement and I have all these papers and things from childhood and paperwork from tax seasons past and all that. And it's, what am I going to do with all this? Nobody's going to want this. So I started looking at a lot of the childhood stuff, threw it out. Some of it I just put in a rubber container and it's off to the side, but at least I know what's in the container now. And I'm just keeping that for the sentimentality of it all. But man, you look around here and everything is cleaned. It's organized. Like I went down all the way to, I did a deep clean. I went down to the baseboards. I'm getting all the dog hair up and stuff like that. But then when you come in the house, you can even smell after being away. Like it smells better. Everything feels lighter. You walk into different rooms and you can feel the energy has changed because things are no longer in there. There's things that are missing that were once there. And you can feel the burden being lifted away through that process. And that's something that you can do regularly. And I don't know why we don't do it more. We probably should. But you get to this place where you really start to feel better. But that, again, is a metaphor for life in that you have to clear out the old in order to make room for the new. And so we have to do that internally as well.
Everything holds energy, which is why I'm also a big proponent of when you go through a breakup, you got to get rid of, you got to throw shit out. You got to delete text messages. I don't care if I had a hair tie that I wore with you, like it's out. I want none of that in my, because I take my space and my energy so seriously that your environment, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts, your relationships, your environment, and your habits. So if your environment is triggering to you, and again, if you already have a tendency or propensity to run back to the familiar hell or to beat yourself up, you need to clear that shit out physically and energetically. Get some sage, get some Palo Santo. So get in there and exercise the demons.
Yeah. Definitely delete the text messages. You have to do that. If you are the type of person that after a breakup, you're going to sit there and reread the text messages over and over again, looking for signs, looking for answers. What could I have done better? What could have changed? What happened? Where did it go wrong? When did things start to shift? How can I notice this in the future? And you're going through all of this stuff and you're running yourself ragged through it. Stop that. Don't even let that be an option. Just delete the text messages. I'm not going to say move on because that's difficult. It's going to take time. But part of that process that's going to set you free a lot sooner is deleting those messages.
Not move on, move forward, and move through.
Yeah.
Because moving on, what does that mean? It's like very esoteric. What the fuck does moving on mean?
You grow through what you go through.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you got to take an inventory of how you're actually growing and what you're experiencing. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that relationship, Brianna. I want to hold on to that. And I want to live there, even though they're dating somebody else and going on vacations and living their life and everything's moving forward. I want to stay right here in this moment and live in what could have been.
Yeah. And then I always say, does that make you feel good? I actually did a video on this. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I did really well. And I was like, go ahead, go check their social media, go check on their page. And I'm like, you feel better now? You don't, because you're being
No, they never do. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, no, keep living in fantasy. Keep putting on your fantasy goggles instead of your reality goggles and ask yourself how you feel. Do you like feeling like shit? Then that's on you. I can't help you. Until the pain is bad enough for you, the Dalai Lama himself could come down. You have to be so sad. I remember one time I was going through a breakup and I literally said to my mom, I was like, I don't even want to hear myself talk about this anymore. And that for me was the unlock. So I think until people get to that point of being like, I am so sick of feeling like this and knowing that if I keep choosing this, there is 0% chance that the pain level that I'm having is changing. If I choose something different and new and unknown, yes, there will be a temporary payoff, right? There will be a temporary moment of, okay, I have to feel like shit, but the upside of the unknown can be so much better than what you're doing circling right now.
I do want to go back to your greatest hits on social media.
A few of them.
No, you do. One of the things I love is that you start out a lot of the videos. I don't know if you do so much anymore, but the baby girl, I think, really
Yeah.
resonates with people. But then you do the Sunday Scaries. And
I love
I
it.
love the Sunday thought. So, how did that come about for you with creating that series?
In true Brianna fashion, this advice to myself. So growing up, my whole life, it was a joke like Sunday Night Brianna because, my mom was a school teacher. So I'm 36 years old and I'm like, oh no, on a school night, I can't do XYZ. So my mindset is still very that. On Sunday nights, I would start to get anxious for the week because I had a bunch of sports, my sports schedule. I was doing dance as well. So I was like, how am I balancing dance and sports and school? And I would think about that. And so on Sunday nights, I would get anxious. My mom would read me Wayne Dyer, and then she would go to bed at 8 o'clock. And then my dad and I would stay up and watch bull riding, PBR, and eat roasted chestnuts. And I would be anxious every Sunday night. And so Sunday night, I don't know if it's part of the school teacher thing, like of the upcoming week, I got to do lesson plan. About 2 or 3 o'clock, there's like a visceral change in your body. And so I just started kind of hopping on, I think, on the weekends for whatever reason it is. Actually, I know one of the reasons when you're getting out of a relationship, you're so used to filling up the time with the routine and the familiarity of somebody. Or we always go to the grocery store, we go to the restaurant on Sundays. And so it's like, you can't trust those Sunday emotions because your emotions like that in that moment are not really being good advisors. They can be advisors, but they can't be the ultimate drivers of the decisions that you make because on Monday morning, when you get back to your routine, which is what most people miss, is the routine of things and the schedule, and you have a work meeting and a standing meeting with your boss, like you're not thinking about that. But the mind, when it's idle like that and has this sort of free time, of free range play time, it's, oh, let me go back and play back the highlight reels instead of the director's cut. And there's a psychological phenomenon called rosy restoration where your brain does that. It conveniently edits out all of the bad stuff. And it says, here's all of your greatest hits from what was happening in the relationship. And that is so not the average of the relationship. So I think for people on Sundays, it just really hits deep because they're like, all right, I got anticipatory anxiety for Monday coming up. I have to go back maybe to a job I don't like. And I'm single. And I'm seeing people post highlight reels on Instagram. So your brain is just being a dick. Your brain's a dick most of the time. And so on Sundays, people are like, no, this is a nice reprieve for me to know that I'm not alone. So it's don't trust those Sunday emotions. As always, what would tomorrow me want today me to do? You're going to have that emotional hangover tomorrow and it is not going to be worth it. So you have to also vote and choose from a place of future me, not just temporary emotional weekend me.
Yeah, stop paying attention to the highlight reel. Just because Jessica got to go to Greece with some amazing person doesn't mean that you can't do those things too, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why we do that to ourselves. Look how amazing their life is and mine sucks.
I think that means you have nothing going on. I think that means when people either write negative comments or they do shit like that, I'm like, get a hobby. Who has the time to be doing that?
I don't know.
I think comparison can be helpful if you use it in the sense of that is a reminder to me that I want not necessarily to be in Greece with Chad, but I would like to be in a partnership. So I think if you could use it as a place, again, to not lament your life or come from a place of lack, but what is it it's the same thing when people get jealous or envious of people. That's not a bad emotion to have. It's signaling to you that this person is either further along. Every emotion is just information. And if you can learn to befriend them and say, what is this trying to teach me in this moment? Instead of, how is this trying to wound me in this moment? Then you go and vote with your action. And that is how you start taking radical responsibility of your life.
I also think it ties into this adult thing that I'm seeing more recently, people are saying, I didn't realize that I could do this thing.
Mm.
And we were just talking about this a little bit when, you go into the week and you don't realize that you can make different choices and you don't have to do all the things that you want to have breakfast for dinner. You can do that. Like that's something that you can do. But there's all these rules that you've been given throughout your lifetime. And now as an adult, you're looking back on some of these things and going, I didn't really think about that I could do that. It's just always been a rule. You
So
don't
much
have
in life is just giving yourself
Yeah.
permission to do what, but most people don't know how to be honest with themselves of what is the most loving thing I can do for myself right now? And am I choosing, what is my intention for this? I always ask people that. Like, I don't care if it's for meeting up for a cup of coffee with somebody. Is the intention because it's coming from a place of obligation, an old belief? I feel like guilty. I feel like I should be doing it. Or is it because it's truly aligned and feeling like full fuck yes energy? Anything besides that, I'm not interested. Because for me, my energy and my time is too valuable. And I know what I bring to any kind of interaction. And that comes with a high price tag. And that's not for everybody. And not everybody can afford that. And that's fine. So I think people need to start valuing what they bring to any interaction as well, or any of these old beliefs or outdated systems of, okay, now how can I just give myself permission to be like, no, it's not a full fuck yes, I'm out. I don't want to do it.
And there's another thing I'm seeing with 20 somethings, and it's in that regard of they're not connecting with other people. Not really. They're not spending as much time out in public spaces with people that they like and that they care about. And they'll often say, because of what you just said, it feels like an obligation. Relationships do require a certain amount of obligation. So I'm not saying that you have to, if a friend says, hey, let's go get coffee, that you have to do it every single time. But have the coffee. It's not going to hurt you. And more often than not, that connection ultimately does feel good. Now, if you constantly have connection with that person and it doesn't feel good, that's telling you something very different. But I think for a lot of people, you should probably go have the coffee.
I just did a podcast episode on this, Brianna Approved Podcast. Go listen.
Yeah, go listen, guys.
Listen. But I did it on friendship breakups because I think, to your point, it's, again, everything in life is nuanced and contextual. We're living in this society now where people want a black and white, or they want clickbaity things. Like, there is always different shades of something. So to your point, yes, do you have to push yourself a little bit outside of a comfort zone?
Sometimes.
Yeah. But sometimes you also have to have an honest conversation with yourself of being like, I feel so drained every time I'm with this person, or it's just a legacy friendship and it's not aligned, or I actually feel shit, this person can't be happy for me, or this is pulling me back to an older version of myself that I've worked so hard to outgrow. So for those reasons, I'm out, and I'm not going to give you an explanation on that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize the people that can't be happy for you.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think you have a lot to say on it.
I can't understand it because I am like, there's room for all of us at the top, and I always want to be sending the elevator back down. Those are two of my core pillars as far as who I am as a person. But that is because I'm confident in myself, and I know that unique value that I bring in any kind of interaction, conversation, relationship. So when people are like that, it's usually a reflection of what is going on with their internal state. They don't like themselves. They are not competent. They're worried that I only have this much knowledge. So if somebody else says something similar, then I'm going to be pushed out of the nest. Most everything in life is not personal. And we always are taking things so personally, and we're so defensive. And it's the idea of like, you should be nearly impossible to offend, should be also, if you take anything away from this episode, stop being offended by everything. It's like nothing about you. It's a reflection of the other person in their internal state. Again, happy people want other people to feel happy. Healed people, you have a natural tendency to want to help people. We were just talking about this before the show. If money was no option, I would be giving out free life advice to I do it when I get into an Uber. I'm like, and tell me about what happened in your childhood. You know what I mean? You're a happy, healed person. Hurt people. And that is because they're in their own psychological cage. And that is not, again, that's a bummer for you, but I'm not taking that on. You have to work that shit out, because I had to do my own life reps too. So I think if somebody is not happy for you, it's either a reflection, it's vexing to them because it's a reflection of their shortcomings and what they weren't able to do, or the same thing with settling in relationships. Thor, I'm sorry that you made your bed and you have to lie in it and you have settled. That sounds really problematic for you. I was able to stand on my ground. You can't say you're a principled person if you don't stand on principle. You can't say that you have high standards if you don't uphold those standards. So it's people saying that they're one way and purporting to have a belief system, and then their actions don't align. And in that aperture is who somebody really is. And when you're a very authentic, this is who I am person, like that can be very irritating to people because they couldn't hold that same level of depth and truth and authenticity. And that's not my problem.
I did see somebody say, who's pretty popular on social media and has written a book, that when you hit a certain level of working on your own stuff, we call it healing because that's the popular vernacular that we're using for that. But they were saying that you actually lose a certain level of empathy for the people that aren't doing those things. And I see it a little bit differently. I think it actually expands your level of empathy, true empathy, not the performative empathy that everybody likes to have on social media. They call themselves an empath, but they're closer to narcissist than they are actually being empathetic to anyone's actual cause. But I find that you open up more and you want to just see more people be happy, healthy, wealthy, and you don't take things personally. You're not offended by what people are giving to you because you can see, you can recognize it. You see what level that they're
Mhm.
actually at and where they're working from. And this isn't saying that people are less than or anything like that. It's just recognizing where you're at in your own development and work and understanding that, okay, I don't need to take that personally. I also don't need to dive any further into conversation with you. And
Yeah.
again, that's a great way to take your own personal power back. If you want advice, I'm happy to give it. And if you don't want it and you want to argue about everything, I don't have time for you.
That's also a very razor thin edge because it can almost become nihilistic to the point of being like, "Oh, I've seen this pattern so much. I know exactly why you're doing it." Some people go one way where they say, "Oh, I know why you're doing this, so I'll give you for everything," and they go into martyr mode. I always joke and I'm like, "So I just am like never going to be offended by anything," or because I'm just like, I'm not going to give you a reaction because that's a you problem. So I think you have to see where you are. If you have again that tendency to say, oh, I can excuse all of their bad behavior and justify it away
I
because I
just
have
wrote that down.
yeah, because I have this empathy that is again martyr-like and quote self-serving,
Yeah.
serving you, right? Like seeing the best in people or giving people the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, it's not benefiting you. So how's that working out for you?
I was literally just going to serve that up next. Well done. I like
We're
that.
always on the same page, Jason.
We are. And this, so going back to just the relationships that we have with other people,
Yes.
a lot of times their traits will rub off on us and we don't necessarily recognize that as it's happening. We take on certain things, phrases and sayings and maybe some mannerisms. Why do we do that?
I think people need to not underestimate that. Because that does happen. First of all, emotional contagion is a very real phenomenon. Anybody that you spend enough time with is going to have a rubbing off effect on you. I think people, again, look at it maybe a bit too myopic in the sense of, oh, what are the bad qualities that this person is rubbing off on me, perhaps? But I don't like the way that they look at things. You have to understand that when you're dating somebody or choosing somebody as a partner, you're taking the whole package of them, which also means you have to look at yourself and say, what would benefit me to have certain qualities actually rub off on me in a beneficial way? So I always give the example of I'm not the most patient person all the time. It would behoove me to be with somebody who is calm and patient, right? Because that can rub off on me and make me look at things a little bit differently. There are also other things that, again, instead of just focusing on what don't I want to rub off on me, what would benefit me if I had somebody like this in my life? So I think if you can't necessarily get yourself out of that, it's also what is the average of the person that they're adding? Is it additive to my life? And so it's the what's that saying? The sum of the parts is greater than the whole kind of idea of what are the parts of this person that I like? Because you are dating their problems as well. You are dating their deficiencies as well. You are dating their shit qualities. Is that disproportionate enough to all the other things that they are adding to my life? It's like anything. You're not going to 100% of your job. I don't like doing Excel sheets or I don't like answering follow-up emails, but I like making content and I like working with people one-on-one. So it's what is the thing that I feel that I can deal with that aren't rubbing off in a way that when I think about me as a person, the unit of Brianna, is that making my life stocks go up or down? Is that making me a more expansive version of myself or a lesser version of myself? Do I feel more aligned towards the life that I'm trying to build, or do I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells? So, and then again, that kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about. It's actually not about the other person at all. It's always, what is going on with me? Do I like how I am now? If, let's say, for example, you're a person who works out and you work out in the morning. When you're with this person now, have your workouts been like totally shit and you're not working out at all anymore and you're like eating like garbage, or maybe you're drinking more, right? And there's always a curve in the beginning when you're dating people. You get out of your routines a little bit. You're staying up past your bedtime. But it's, am I getting so far away from the person that I am because this person is down in my life and I am taking on the way that they're living their life? That's also a fine line of saying, like, where am I drawing the boundaries of saying, okay, if you want to live that life, I'm not going to have that. I mean, infiltrate what I'm doing and what I built.
Yeah, it's just interesting. What is an acceptable level of sacrifice in that regard? Because I think we get really stuck in, again, in our patterns and our habits and our rituals, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've gotten really good at living independently from other people. And so when you invite someone else into your life, like you're saying, it's really important to look at what they're bringing in with them. Are they tracking in a bunch of mud that you're now going to have to deal with? And how does that impact your life? Is it helpful or is it unhelpful? And is it something that can be changed? And do they want to change in any ways? And all too often people enter into relationships with the thought process of, I can fix them, I can change them, I can make them who I want them to be, because gosh darn it, they're just really cute, or they're handsome, or she's beautiful. And man, I can just change these 3 things and they'll be perfect. Except you're not looking at the whole person and, what gives you the right to even want to change the person to begin with.
If you're going into a relationship thinking, I'll change this person, or again, the 1-day wager, as Matthew Hussey calls it, like one day, if they just stop doing XYZ, you are in for an uphill battle, because you're going to always be waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because if that doesn't happen, then that's when cognitive dissonance comes in, and that's when sunk cost fallacy comes in. And it's just too hard to get out for most people. You have to be very strong-willed, and even the most strong-willed person is going to say, I've invested the time and energy. So I think that's a really good, just too much time and energy.
That one. I don't want to start over.
I don't want to start.
Just gave this person 3 months. I just gave them 9 months. I just gave them a year. I don't want to start over. So you're willing to accept all of this that you already don't like?
Talk about delaying your pain. I always tell people, I'm like, you don't want to start over? Okay, so do this for another 5 years, and now you're going to actually be, instead of 3 months behind, you're going to be 5 years and 3 months behind, and you're starting over with even probably more baggage. So
with 2 kids and a divorce, right? That's where you're heading.
Yeah.
It breeds toxicity, and you don't realize that you're the one that's participating actively in that because of your own thought process.
Yeah, no, it's easier to be like, this person was terrible and they did.
Well, yeah, we make the other person the bad object, and it's not saying that they didn't do a bunch of things that were wrong or negative towards the relationship, but that combination of you and that person brought about these events that occurred. And so you have to take ownership for that. And a lot of people they don't want to go there.
I always just people, like, I'm like, do you want to co-sign for fill in the blank for this behavior, for this cycle, for this habit? Do I want to co-sign that for ostensibly the rest of my life? There's always an exit strategy you can always get out. But I'm just saying, like, the theory should be, it's hard enough to make a good relationship work. So imagine going into it on unsettled or unsure territories of saying, yeah, and then maybe they'll change. Maybe they won't. Maybe it'll get worse, actually. So that, again, is that a bet that you want to say, I'm not a gambler. I don't have that kind of dopamine issue. So for me, I'm like, absolutely 0% interest in that. Some people have a higher set point for that.
So as we exit this episode and bring it to a close, what would you tell someone to do when seeking out a relationship that they really desire? What are some steps that they can take to really understand who they are, what they want, where they're going, and create a positive narrative without letting it get carried away?
This is one of my favorite questions and one of my favorite assignments to make my clients do is I always say that you are obviously the CEO of your own life, right? And you have to look at yourself as a business. The person that is coming into your life is going, and actually any person, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partnership, if you're a good company, everybody is going to want to work at that company and everybody is going to want to apply. If you don't even know what the basic bare minimum requirements are for the applicant that is your, let's call it, co-founder of your life, if you don't get so meticulous on that and have such a serious criteria list, everybody who comes in, if you're feeling understaffed, metaphorically, meaning I'm lonely, I'm bored, all the drugs that make us go back to people that are not good for us, you will hire anybody and that will take down the whole company. So you need to figure out what is the bare minimum requirements. So the idea of they were nice and they loved me, I would sure as hell hope so that if you're in a relationship with somebody, that would be like, I'm hiring somebody to be a project manager for this company and they don't have computer literacy skills. Good luck with that employee. So getting very clear on the criteria that you want and understanding the person who is hiring for the position if they actually have the skill set. So again, that goes back to being honest with yourself of saying, I need somebody who has a master's level degree and this person only has a GED. So what's going on with me? Either I'm full of shit of what I wanted, you get what you pay for. So you have to get very clear on the criteria and you need to be understanding that this person is going to impact and color every single decision of your life, mental health, physical health. I would rather have no partner than a not supportive partner. So understanding that if you choose the wrong person, that will bring down your company of one more than being short-staffed for a little bit.
I will add to that, be careful looking at the superficial. It's always interesting to me. You mentioned degrees, and people often have in their mind, I want somebody else that has a PhD because maybe I have one.
I meant that metaphorically, though, just to.
No, I know, but a lot of people take it literally, and they find themselves in this position where they feel like they're dating down. When there's a lot of people that are business owners, maybe they graduated high school and that's all they have, but they have a massively successful business and they've learned through the school of hard knocks and living life and earned wisdom. And that can be a really good relationship. So I would caution people when you're making your list out of the things that you desire or you believe that you want, that you just might be surprised by people when you go on the date, actually show up for the date. And just spend some time and not put too much emphasis on the date itself and just get curious about the other person that's sitting across from you. Because I think you'll be surprised a lot of the times with what people are willing to tell you.
You need to also get, so right, that's like, when I say the get clear on the criteria, that's the basic bare minimum shit of what is it that I need? What didn't I get in my past relationship? What is the bare minimum to start the conversation, whatever that is? And I always talk about dating in your emotional pay range. So again, like understanding what are you willing to pay? The next step is you have to get so clear on what your values are. And I make every person do, they have to write out what their definition of the value is and then give me tangible examples. Because the biggest example I see all the time is I want somebody who's generous. What is your definition of generous?
Yeah, what does that look like?
Money, and some are with generous with time. And again, somebody could be giving their quote enough and best. And if it's not enough and best for you, then you have to have an honest conversation with yourself and saying, this is what I said was my definition. This person is showing me this. So either I'm full of shit or I'm settling.
I did have this conversation yesterday on live because it's so interesting to me. But you pre-qualify people. If you're using dating apps, that's fine. Whatever. I'm over that. I don't think they're really beneficial for most people. Depends on where you live and the overall demographic that's available to you. But you can get rid of a bunch of people pretty quickly by just reading the profile. Imagine if, because it's always in the beginning, right? So you have somebody that consumes alcohol. Maybe they do that more frequently than you would like because you're sober. Excellent. That person's probably not for you. That's probably not a relationship that you're going to want to have. So you see 3 pictures, alcohol in every picture, but you're sober. That's probably not somebody you're going to date, or at least it shouldn't be. But what people do is they say, it'll be fine. And they start dating that person. And again, they find themselves 9 months down the road going, I don't know what happened. Everything seemed to be this way. And then now 9 months later, it's this way. It shouldn't be a surprise. You looked at that and you saw that and you okayed something that went against your values and standards. And you did it anyway. So you really have to get in tune with what it is that you actually want and you're willing to tolerate.
That's why I make people do this job description of sorts of what would my dream partner, what would it feel like on a Tuesday night? What would we be doing? And then the values. And again, it's not about them. It's about, I said that this was the job description of what I wanted to quote metaphorically for my dream partner. These are the values that are important for me, the most important pillars. And this is my definition of the values. And this is how I'm prioritizing them. Now, anybody comes into my life, this is now a filtration system that I use Because again, then either I'm full of shit and I'm lying to myself because they're showing me who they are. So at some point, again, that goes back to radical responsibility of saying, I said I wanted this person and they're showing me this. So either I'm so desperate and lonely that I'm going to just lower my standards, or I have to honor the commitment that I made to myself of saying, this is what I want. And just because an applicant hasn't come in yet, I'm going to have to hold out.
And with that, the people that say, what if this is the best I can do?
Then you got to look at your belief systems and what is, what is your definition of best? Every person who comes to me with any kind of this version of, what if that's a failure? I'm like, what's your definition of failure? What is your definition of enough? What is your definition of best? I would argue if you're asking, what if this is the best I can do? You already have your answer. That's like when people come to me and say, and I'm like, if you're asking the question, you probably have some inkling that you're thinking about it.
So the person that generally asks that question, they follow it up with, I'm afraid nobody is going to love them the way that I love them if I were to let them go. And it's, you're not loving them. That's not loving. You're not loving them at all, actually. You might think that you are in some way, shape, or form, maybe through acts of service or other things that are going on in that relationship. But really what you're doing is preventing them from finding the person that's actually going to love and care for them for who they are as a person. And you're just seeing them as somebody, what if this is the best I can do? So you should let that person go. However, I did have somebody that asked that question and ended up marrying that person because they were able to answer it in a way that made more sense to them, and they found the value and gratitude in that relationship. If they had a series of other things that they had to work through first to get to that place, and now they are very happily married. So
yeah, ignorance is bliss. That's totally fine as well. And again, I think it's figuring out everything comes at a price. So what is the price tag I'm willing to associate? Everybody wants Jordans. Nobody wants to pay Jordan prices. So if you want the best relationship and mid-range, there's nothing wrong with. That's totally fine. So I think it's also being honest with yourself, being like, at the stage of life that I'm in, with the resources that I have and the mental capacity and wherewithal, this is the price range I feel comfortable in. And that's okay.
Brianna Diorio, Dr. Brianna Diorio, tell everybody how to reach you, how to work with you.
First of all, Jason, thanks for having me back on the podcast. I love confabulating with you. Always great. We always get into great conversations.
We could make this a series.
We could definitely make this a series or maybe launch a course together. We'll talk about that offline. You can follow my podcast, which is the Brianna Approved Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow me on TikTok, Brianna Diorio, Instagram, Brianna Diorio, and you can go to briannadiorio.com to find the hub of all of my information, ways to work with me and get all of the knowledge bombs.
Do you have anything new on the horizon or any webinars coming up?
I do. I don't know when you're releasing this, though. So I have a webinar actually on October 29th, which is next Wednesday. So I'm not sure what your turnaround time is on that. But yes, I have a webinar October 29th, which is talking about the idea of going from self-doubt to self-trust. So learning how to differentiate between intuition and anxiety, learning how to say, I know what I should be doing better, but now this is how I implement doing better. So auditing and bringing awareness to your situations. And that's it for now.
And is the link for that in your stand store?
It is. Yes. Everything is always in my stand store.
Awesome. And what other ways can people work with you?
Like, how can they work with me? So I have one-on-one coaching. I have a 1-month program. I have a 3-month program. I'm actually currently, I have a group coaching program, which has been really great. I'll probably offer another one of those in the springtime, which is really nice. So every week we have a different pillar and focus. So I would say just follow my TikTok because that's and sign up for my newsletter. It's the best way to know when I'm dropping new ways to work with me. But you could always book a one-on-one session or join the next group coaching program.
And then if you want to dip your toe in, you also offer video responses?
I do offer video responses. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. I always encourage people to look at those and actually just put in a request, because I think you'd be very surprised at the amount of information that you get from those personalized videos. And for people that are always on the fence with coaching or joining a membership or anything like that, it's always a great way to get a feel for the person that you might be working with in the very near future. So don't be afraid to dip your toe in, guys. Sign up for those little individual responses. I have those as well. And Brianna, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. Ciao.